Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. We're carrying on with the season preview series today, and this episode will be focusing on the Baltimore Ravens. For those of you who haven't seen one of these episodes before, I will be going through my projected starters on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. Of course, we're in the midst of training camp, pre-season's coming up, but I don't think I'm going to be too far off in terms of how this team lines up come September. I will then be going through what I consider the key areas of the schedule and giving my projected record for the upcoming season before going through what I deem to be the three key areas if this team is going to make a run back at the playoffs and having a successful year. So let's hop right into this and get to the offensive starters. Of course, at quarterback, even if things are looking a bit sketchy now with the bad back, Joe Flacco, I think we've seen since this team won the Super Bowl, he's not of that caliber of quarterback who's capable of elevating an entire team on his back, like an Andrew Luck. And while the Colts haven't had good records, I think he is that guy. That team would be far worse, or an Aaron Rodgers, a Peyton Manning, or a Brady. He does make this team a threat to make the playoffs just by his mere presence, but he's certainly better than the vast majority of starters. Big-armed, big guy, and he's done a good job limiting turnovers after a fairly sketchy start to his career in that regard. The running back position, I lost Kenneth Dixon for the season because honestly I don't know what it is with the Ravens, they just seem cursed as of late. I've got Terrence West and Danny Woodhead as my two heading into the season. Terrence West has had flashes at times. I'm not sure he'd be getting this opportunity if it wasn't for the Dixon injury, but at the minute I think he's a leader in the clubhouse. I think he's got decent quickness and burst. Whether he's got the power or the top end speed that you want one of those things, I think, to distinguish yourself as a starting running back, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case. But I think he'll be able to carry the load with some help. Danny Woodhead's an exceptional scat back type. Has been brilliant in the screen and the short passing game for a long time. Is a better runner than people give him credit for. I think he'll certainly give this offense more productivity than they've had, particularly in the pass game. And Flacco is more than happy to dump off, as we saw when Ray Rice was running around in the Ravens' backfield. But he can't do it all. He's definitely not an every down guy, especially at this stage in his career. Whether they can salvage, a passable run game out of these two and some of the other guys, again, I think this is one of the jobs that's absolutely wide open. And you never know, a running back can come from nowhere. So you never know. Maybe the Ravens will have a good run game at last. It's been a while. Wide receiver, this group looks certainly different than you would have expected a couple of years ago. Jeremy Maclin and Mike Wallace, I expect to be the 1 and 2. Mike Wallace had a surprisingly productive season last year. He's never been a particularly reliable wide receiver, but last year he actually was a little bit. Flacco relied on him and he actually performed well. It's not quite the burner he once was, but it's still an absolute threat to take the top off of a defence. Very dangerous after the catch for that reason, even if I still believe his hands are a bit iffy. He's not the most natural catcher of the ball, and you got to keep him happy. He can certainly lose it a little bit. Jeremy Maclin, he is what he is. Good route runner, quick player, not necessarily a deep threat. I've always said, this guy's never going to be able to be a true number one. He's just not got the physical tools to be so. Not to be a true number one anyway, but he's a good player. He's probably, since Steve Smith retired, the best option that they've had as a reliable possession guy for Flacco to lean on. He'll do his job on the short and intermediate routes. Brashad Perriman, who knows? He's supremely talented, a big, fast receiver. Really could end up being a true number one, but we've just not had the opportunity to see it through a combination of injuries and, frankly, not looking ready when he has been on the field. I think this is a big year for him. The Ravens will be hoping to see him come along. I wouldn't be surprised to not see much of him. If so, that's a worrying sign. But he could potentially be the number one. As I say, big year for him. I'm looking forward to seeing what he's got. At the tight end position, well, scratch Crockett Gilmore off. Apparently he's out for the season. Again, this team is just cursed. They already lost Dennis Pitter. So it looks like Max Williams, who was a high draft pick last year, I believe it was. So he'll likely be the starting tight end. I believe Benjamin Watson's also on the roster. Probably should have checked that before I started this episode. But I'm pretty sure he is. If so, Watson, he's an experienced player. He can certainly help in the short passing game, throw in a bit of blocking. Williams hasn't really shown too much at this point, but he was a pretty high draft pick, and they'll be hoping he can develop and become a key part of this passing game, you'd think. The offensive line, man, this group's changed in the last couple of years. Offensive tackle, Ronnie Stanley had a pretty good rookie season. I think they can feel pretty good about that pick at this point. Good pass blocker. I think he's got, obviously got room to improve. Needs to be a bit more physical for me, particularly in the run game, but hopefully that will come. And right tackle is a bit of a question mark. I've got James Hurst, who I'm not particularly familiar with, but from what I can see, that's who a lot of people are expecting to be the starter. I think that could be a real problem spot. Losing Ricky Wagner to the Lions was a tough one for this team, I think. The guard spot, a lot of size there. Drafted Nico Siragusa. I think he'll be the starter. I think him and Yonder will give him a pair of real solid, big, physical guys. I mean, Yonder for me is, it's between him and Zach Martin for the best interior lineman, guard in the league. Yonder probably has it at this point. Experience is just absolute quality player. No holes in his game. He is just all-round, flat-out dominant and versatile. I think Siragusa would probably be a bit of an issue in pass protection this early in his career, but I'm pretty sure he'll be able to come in and run block effectively. And at centre, Ryan Jensen, again, not a guy I'm too familiar with. Zutar's been doing a pretty good job there the last couple of years. Still not entirely sure why they traded him, but there you go. And at kicker, the best kicker in the league in Justin Tucker. If this team, was to win 12 or 13 games, there's probably a good chance Tucker's in the MVP discussion. This offense, I'm so concerned about it. I was concerned before this sort of deluge of injuries, which has made things even worse. Now they're inexperienced at the tight end position. The wide receiver group is two veterans, but one of them who's coming off a couple of down years, one's notoriously unreliable, a bunch of a supremely talented rookie. Nothing screams out, a certainty there. The run game's been a problem for a while. It's hard to see that turning around. And the offensive line's just had so much change in the last couple of years. It is really tough to get excited about this group. You can see the upside in the receiving core. It's certainly there. And there's some nice pieces on the O-line. But there's a lot of inexperience. And as I say, I don't believe Flacco's the kind of quarterback that can carry a team to massive success on the offensive side of things. So I'm very concerned. I think this group is going to struggle, particularly early in the year. There's a lot of new pieces. Flacco will probably be a bit rusty. Apparently at the minute he's struggling to bend over, let alone fling a football around. So I'm very concerned about this group. So we'll move on to the defensive side of the ball. A lot of change here as well. I'm not sure how this team lines up. I've currently got them in a 3-4 because it's historically how they've lined up over the years, but I wouldn't be shocked to see a 4-3. If they are in a 3-4, I've got Willie Henry and Chris Wormley, the rookie, as the starting defensive ends. Again, not entirely sure this will be the case. If not, maybe see Wormley and Brandon Williams as a pair of DTs, and you'll see Suggs and Bowser, I think, as the outside as the defensive ends. Not too familiar with Henry. I liked Wormley as a prospect. I think early on you might see some struggles there, but I think he's got the size that you look for in a starting defensive end for a 3-4. If he's in a 4-3, I think you could try him at free technique. I'm not sure how much rush he'll offer. Brandon Williams is, of course, an elite nose tackle. He was fantastic last season. Only Damon Harrison, for me, better at the position last year. So he's a real asset. He'll make this team tough to run up those A-gaps on. The outside backer or defensive end position, Terrell Suggs and Tyus Bowser. Suggs isn't the player he was, but he's still such a high effort player that he will be productive. Of that I'm convinced. He's always been a great run player, and I just don't see why that would change. He's ferocious in that regard. Just not sure he's necessarily a double-digit sack guy at this point in his career. It wouldn't surprise me if he still is, but saw a bit of drop off last year. I don't think he's got quite as much burst as he once did. Bowser, the rookie, I just think he's got more upside. I'm worried about where the pass rush will come from, and I think they'll look to his youth and athleticism to try and produce it, even though I do think he's very raw. Might be better off at end than outside backer, but we'll see. The inside backer or middle linebacker, I suppose Correa could be an outside backer if this team's in a 4-3. But Mosley's developed into a very good player. It didn't happen quite as quickly as I think some people expected, but he was quietly very good last year. Did a good job getting the team into the positions they needed to be in. Solid coverage guy, but he's very good against the run. He plays physical, he plays tough, he takes on blocks well and sheds them just as effectively, and is a good tackler. He's become a very good player. And now we'll move on to the positive. The secondary. I really like this secondary. Corner, Jimmy Smith, he's been somewhat under the radar, but he's one of the better corners in the league. Bordering on top 10 contention. He's one of the guys I've struggled to leave off my top 10 corners list. But I think he's quietly become a very good player. Brandon Carr, I think he'll get the starting job. Humphrey, probably the free early on in the season. I think Carr would be well suited to the slot actually as an experienced player. Whilst he may not necessarily have the quickness at this stage in his career you'd like to see there, I think, especially if he's playing a fair bit of zone, I think he could be very good there. He's always played the run reasonably. Humphrey was a player I liked. His stock fell in the draft, but I still stand by. I think he was one of the top 12 or so players in this draft. I think it might take him a while to get used to the NFL game, but once he gets there, I think he's going to be a real asset to this team. And then the safety group, these two are great. I loved Tony Jefferson last year with the Cardinals. Eric Weddle's been one of my favourites for a long time. If Jefferson can simply repeat, Weddle, you know what you've got there. He's a very smart player, very rarely caught out of position, keeps the whole secondary organised. Maybe not the best tackler in the world because of his size. He does get overpowered every now and then, but the effort's there. The technique is there, but you will miss a couple. Jefferson was just dynamic as heck last year for the Cardinals. If he can replicate that, this secondary is fantastic. And at punter, Sam Koch. This defensive group, I worry about that front seven. There's a lot of inexperience there, and I'm still not sure exactly how they're going to line up. Probably should have looked into what they've been doing in camp in a little more detail, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him being pretty multiple, trying to perhaps disguise things, confuse teams a little. It's just I worry where the rush is coming from. Whilst I think they've got a lot of size, I think they can hold up against the run pretty well. Suggs and Williams, especially fantastic players in that regard. The pass rush is the concern, even with a secondary that I'm expecting to be as good as that. I'm not sure where the sacks are coming from, so I do think that's going to be a problem. However, I expect this unit to be above average, simply because the run defence and secondary is. I can't see teams scoring a lot of points on them by any means. So if the team's going to be successful, I think it'll be on the back of this group overachieving, which is certainly possible. There is talent there. It's just whether they can fit the pieces in around it and get them playing at a reasonable level. So in terms of next season, last year the Ravens did well to get to 8-8. To be honest, on the back of some very good defence. This year, I think they struggle. I've got them going 6-10. I'm really concerned about this offence. I'm not sure the defence will be able to quite shut down teams enough to win a lot of low-scoring games. I would have had them maybe around 8-8, 9-7, possibly battling for a wildcard spot. But with the rash of injuries they've suffered, with the issues Flacco's currently having, I find it very difficult to imagine this team coming out and getting off to a hot start. And when I think you're a fairly talent-thin team, you can't afford to drop games early in the season when you've got the Bengals, the Browns and the Jags, which all look like winnable games. But if they come out slow and lose any of those, I think when the schedule does get a bit rougher afterwards, they'll be in trouble. There's a big spell for me where they play the Dolphins, the Titans, the Packers and the Texans all in a row. I expect the Dolphins, the Titans and the Texans all to be battling with them for a wildcard spot. I can't see this Ravens team winning the division with the Steelers there, and the Packers are certainly going to be a difficult game. So I think if this team's going to achieve anything, that stretch of games in particular is going to have to go well, as well as starting the season well when, as I say, I think they'll be a bit sluggish perhaps with the offence kind of looking to get into gear. The 3 key areas, if this team is going to push for that wildcard spot and finish better than I expect with this 6-10 record, the run game, they need to have balance. They haven't for the last few years. As a result, Flacco hasn't been as productive as he can be. He's a good play action thrower. It's just you've got to have teams respecting the run game in order to do that, especially with some of the maulers they've got up front. Make the most of it. I'm not sure this team's going to be great in pass pro with some of the inexperience. They're going to have to keep teams off balance, especially with some potentially... it's hard to say with the weapons. They could be very hit or miss, I feel, this season. The front 7. So you've got Brandon Williams and Mosley. The guys around them are just going to have to get pressure. I feel like they'll do a good job against the run. I'll be very surprised if they don't. But there's got to be pressure. Terrell Suggs can't do it all at his age. There's no other proven or reliable pass rushers in that group. Someone, at least one player, is going to have to step up and threaten to be that guy, or ideally be that guy. Otherwise, as good as the secondary is, I think it's going to be a tough ask for them. The offensive line, Flacco's not the most mobile guy. He's coming off these injuries. There's not a lot of experience there. As I say, they're going to be integral to getting the run game going, especially with what looks like a very mediocre group of running backs. Not sure these receivers are going to be exceptional at getting open early in routes. I think the offensive line is going to have to play out of its mind, considering the inexperience for this team to be successful. I'm not sure if that's going to necessarily end up being the case. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the Ravens. I'm very down on this team this year, I know, but it's just they're an uninspiring roster at this point in time. So sorry about that, guys. Let me know what you think. Are there any players you think are going to potentially change my mind on this team this season? Let me know, whether it's the comment section below, the Cover Zero Facebook page, or find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to talk ball. As always, if you've enjoyed it, check out some more of the show. I've got through, this is episode 20 now, so the vast majority of the league. The rest will be coming up over the next couple of weeks. If you can like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, all that good stuff, it would be greatly appreciated. There's plenty of different stuff up on the channel. Really appreciate if you check some of that out. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure. Have a great evening and go Bucks.